even though you're trying to teach people, you still need to be teachable yourself.
Yeah.
And whether that's being taught from those you're leading or just in general, always getting better. Because I don't think people want to follow somebody who seems like they know all the answers. That doesn't, you can't resonate with somebody who, because I remember thinking that, it's like, why I can't resonate with somebody who I feel like knows everything.
Welcome to the Hope in Real Life podcast with Jason Gore. Our team is passionate and committed to bringing you more hope in the everyday, real areas of your life. If this conversation and content is valuable for you, please do us a favor. Like, subscribe, and even share. You never know how valuable it could be to share a little bit of hope with someone else. Let's get the conversation started. Well, hello to our Hope in Real Life listeners. So excited to be here this week with a special guest, and is actually a friend of mine as well. Runs by the name of Bradford Mitchell.
Hello.
How's it going, Bradford? Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. We are here today to talk about using your influence. And really, this is all about how do you use the platform or the gifts or the talents or the abilities that might be God-given to you or that you've worked hard to build up, or some combination between how do you use those to influence others, which for this podcast is a big deal, because this podcast, it really is all about how do we point other people towards hope.
Sure.
And so for this topic, man, how do we use our platform to influence other people? A little bit about Bradford. He is really one of the primary minds behind a worship tutorial, which is, among other things. I tell you what, let you tell other people about worship tutorials, okay, how you got into it, and just what's the overall vision behind worship tutorials.
Yeah. So my buddy Brian and I have known each other for, about 11 years now. And before I met him, he had a lot of time to kill. His wife was in like med school, or she was getting her PhD. I guess that's different. And he just started making videos on YouTube, like playing worship songs.
I feel like I've heard this before, though. There's a story before. Like there's a musician who married someone way smarter than him.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, sounds pretty normal.
Well, what's wild is, as smart as she is, he's like very smart too. He double majored in biology and chemistry, and he got his master's in business. And so if you like watch worship tutorials from the beginning to where it is now, everything that you see, like how things sound and look and everything we teach on, all of this stuff is like basically like this journey and the story of how Brian learned how to do everything. Yeah. Photography, video, audio, playing guitar, all of that. It's wild. And I love telling people that because I love bragging on that dude, because he's super smart and he has put a lot of effort into it. But that's how it started. He just started like playing songs acoustically. And this was like when YouTube was still rather young and it wasn't flooded with content. And he just started doing it. I guess a lot of people resonated with it because they'd hear a song from a church, and it's like the like anthemic or like arena rock or whatever. Like it just sounded big always. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it would just be very hard for a small church to understand how they could do that song in their context. So he would just be playing a popular worship song, just him on acoustic guitar, and just singing it, and people resonated with it. And they're like, this song, Mighty to Save, like this seems way more approachable to me than hearing how Hillsong did it. So he started doing that, and then he started teaching, and people latched onto that. And I met him maybe about 3-4 years into him doing it pretty randomly, not super intentional. We both worked at the same church. We were part-time, so we just took Fridays to, when we had our days off, we worked Sunday, Thursday kind of thing. And we started making content and figuring out, like, okay, we have volunteers on our team who don't know how to do X, Y, Z. Yeah. So we could hold a session on a Saturday, and that's great. We could do that. And that's personable, and that's encouraged also, obviously. But it was like, there are other churches who are going to have the same hole. Like, how do we, you could grow up playing guitar in a garage band, and like, absolutely, you can still play worship, but there's parts about it that people are scratching their heads and they're like, how do we do this? Yeah. Or they haven't played guitar in 10 years and they want to. And so we started making content from the perspective of how is it going to help our people, and it resonated with other people. So we just kept going and kept finding, as we did that more, you get more comments, people telling you what the need is. We would just kind of gauge the room. Man, a lot of people are asking about this lately. Let's do this. And felt needs, like just how can we, and it's all free. We sell products, but we also give away a free version of that product that's just as good. So like you don't even need to pay us anything. If you want to have something, I mean, you could have really good stuff, or we make lots of different things. And it's like, but the free thing isn't any less good just because it's free.
Right.
So that's all for guitarists. The products are, but the vision is pretty to the point, to help people, to help churches have excellent and authentic worship. And that's the one vision statement. And the idea here is that doesn't even require money.
Yeah. What I love is you guys have, you started out really by just starting. And you hear that so much when you listen, whether it's entrepreneurs or people who are starting something new. Man, you just got to start, and you're going to figure it out along the way. Like, what's the actual need, what my passions really are. And then at some point, those things come together, and then some magic happens, which we'll talk about what that magic kind of looks like for you guys here in a moment. But can you talk just for a minute, like, what is specifically your role within Worship Tutorials? What's the value add that you bring, and how do you serve?
Yeah. Brian and I now kind of just do everything together, really. There's like one of our good friends, Nick, is our videographer, and he's amazing at that, but he also plays guitar. We have various other people who've been a part of the channel and do stuff. I kind of, the thing I kind of focus on the most is how do I listen to a worship song, and I listen to all the guitar parts, and how can I make it work for one guitar player? Average church in America is like, 70, 80 people, I think is the number. Right. So it's like the chances of them having multiple guitar players is slim. And even then, like,
do you want 5 electric guitars in a church of 70 people?
I have a hard time with 2. Sometimes I'm like, can it just be me? Yeah. That's just selfish. But so I'd say that's the primary thing. But together we make the digital product that we sell to guitar players, and him and I both come up with content ideas. And for videos we can make to just help people, and especially if God's been teaching me something or helping me figure something out, I'll share a video, and we'll just sit down and kind of like people just resonate with you being real and sharing what's going on. And so even if it doesn't feel like it's something that people have been asking for, it still goes over really well when you're just real and you're yourself.
Yeah. So you guys right now, you're well on your way, and I probably should have said this right out of the gate. You're well on your way to 1 million subscribers on YouTube, which is a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Like 1 million is more than 100,000 or 500,000, just for the people out here who aren't good at math.
Right.
I mean, that's a lot. Okay.
I think that checks out.
Yeah. How did you get there? Like, how did you gain that following?
That is a good question. We ask ourselves that all the time.
Yeah.
So part of it also, we know that our audience is pretty segmented. We have people who watch just because they enjoy music, and whether it's Christian or not, whether they are a Christian or not, sometimes that's the case. Sometimes it's worship leaders, sometimes it's guitar players. We have people, we do stuff like gear reviews also, which is really helpful for musicians. And a lot of times, even though people will blatantly tell us, I don't believe in God, but I still love what you guys do. And that actually is like a great honor to me to know that somebody like that, like it just means I have some form of say at some point, maybe I could say or do something that helps them know God is real. But that like, we just do so many different things that I think that's another conversation. That wasn't what you asked, but we have so many different like things that we do that I think draws people in, and we really love covering a wide variety of topics. So I think just being consistent. And we got in really early with YouTube. Nowadays, it's pretty saturated. There are, like, you look at any of the top worship songs, for example, and you type that in and then add the word guitar to it, and you may see like 8 videos, 12 videos, 30 videos of people playing that song. But I think part of it for us is we were just consistent over a long period of time and just kept going. And
being first to market and then consistent over an extended period of time is what I'm hearing. Yeah. Another thing that jumps out is, I mean, you guys really, you add value, right? I mean, and this is, so we're talking about Worship Tutorial, what it means to lead worship in the context of a church, most likely essentially in Western context in America. Yeah. But that's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is how to build influence and how to influence others. And what I'm hearing is you guys add value. You actually have an issue figuring out, okay, what are the value adds? What are the questions that people are asking? And then how can we address that? Yeah. And so from my vantage point, when I check out what you guys do, I'm like, I can't believe people are doing this for free because it's something that's desperately needed. Yeah. Which kind of cues up the next question. So if you don't know, so Bradford, again, I mentioned he and I are friends. He plays guitar at our church, has some of the best guitar tone around.
That's
by the
good
way.
because
So-
that's how I make my money. So to hear you say that means I feel like I'm.
yeah, I mean, very, very good, top notch. But you could, with your, and you're not just an electric guitar player. I mean, you, worship leader. We could throw you up with an acoustic guitar and just you in a room, and you'll point people to God and do a phenomenal job. So you could, you're with your talent, with your giftings, with your experience, you could be the guy at a number of churches in America on a big stage and everything revolving around you. And you chose to not go that route and to go this route and invest a bit more heavily in worship tutorials. Can you talk just a little bit about that? Like what led you to do that and why that is?
Yeah.
And it could just be because none of those churches are willing to pay you enough. I don't know, but there could. I think there's more to it than that.
I have always kind of felt a pull to leadership in general. I remember back in like high school being in scouts. I was in Boy Scouts and I wanted to be, they called like the boy that was
You
over all
look more like a Boy Scout than a guitar player, to be honest with you. You do. You're big.
I don't know if
That
I
beard.
appreciate that.
No,
or-
that big old
I look like a
burly
Boy
beard.
Scout with a beard.
We're going to watch a YouTube clip in a minute. That's true. That's weird. Boy Scouts, an adult scout. We're going to see a clip in a minute. Don't forget how you were answering the question.
Okay.
But you've got straight lumberjack swag on.
I just love flannel.
Okay. All right. Okay. So back to you. Why?
Yeah, I remember just even being in like high school, I wanted to be like the senior patrol leader is what they called it. So that was like the boy who kind of like ran the troop. And I just really felt this draw to helping these boys. You know, I mean, I was 16, 17 at the time, and I had, young Boy Scouts with me too. And I just wanted to like influence them. I didn't really know how. I think I just really thought it was cool to be in charge. But as I got older, I realized that the science and the idea behind leadership and like what that means, like that just fascinated me. And then I realized that leadership is not just the guy in charge. It's, to use, the kind of what we've been talking about. I mean, it's like the person who has influence over things, whether it's influence how an organization moves to begin with, or just influence like to be able to help people become better people.
Yeah.
And so when I got this opportunity to start doing stuff with Brian, and I started realizing I actually kind of like, this is like kind of my outlet. I enjoy it. I like people, but I also like being by myself. I don't know. I'm not really an extrovert, I guess. Maybe I am. I don't know. So like the idea of like teaching a class is not as much, like it's fun, but I feel like I'd rather just hang out with people at that point. So I can like teach, and then I can make a video, and I can be succinct because I can talk for hours and hours on end. And so I was like, this is actually kind of more, I can sit on things more, I can stew more, I can really hone it in, and I feel like I can be more impactful if I can like make a video. Because you put me in a room, I get very distracted. So a video, I can be more intentional. And it just was really fun, and we saw people actually engaging with it. And subscribers were going up. People were telling us every once in a while, even at Hope, someone would be like, so a friend of mine told me they watch your channel. And so stuff like that was like, okay, so maybe we got something here.
Right.
Like we should just keep doing it. And I don't know, it just really resonates with me more. It's in this day and age, it's all video.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but I've always wanted to do that kind of thing, and I found how to do it, I guess.
Well, it's clearly making an impact, and there's a need. Little known fact here about my backstory. I actually, when I first came out of the business world and into what some people would call ministry.
Yeah.
I have a musical background, and so I started out essentially as a worship leader.
Hey.
And then all kinds ended up on staff here at Hope as a college pastor and worship leader, and then we planted a church out of Hope, and really it was all things creative that I was responsible for. So you learn, you got to learn how to do everything. But the truth is, I would say the secret, the little known secret, but anyone who heard me lead worship, it wouldn't be a secret anymore. Vocals were not my strong suit.
Hey.
I think pitch is all right, but tone probably leaves a bit to be desired. But I did have this, I had this desire for people to experience, and encounter the goodness of God, and to be reminded, as a worship leader, you have this opportunity to put words on people's lips that are true, that they otherwise, in the busyness of life, would not take the time to say, or even know they need to say, or be reminded of. And now you got a room of whether it's 70 people, 1,000 people, 15 people, all reminding one another. So like I was passionate about that.
Yeah.
But what I realized was I was better at equipping people to do that and then getting the heck out of the way and letting people that were way more gifted at it carry most of the weight. And so, that's kind of how I shifted my role back then. But what I've seen you do here is you've almost taken that up even another level, because you've realized we live in a day and age where the world is digital and people are online, and you have access to people that are far more than could potentially show up at your church. And like you're literally now equipping leaders and influencers that are making a difference in the church overall, which I believe ultimately at the end of the day is the hope of the world through Jesus. And so props to you, man, for doing that.
Thank you.
And you're getting it done. We are going to interrupt this episode for some breaking news. If you have been tracking with us as the Hope in Real Life family for any length of time, you have heard us talk about an up-and-coming resource that we have been calling the Hope in Real Life app. I could not be more excited to let you know that the app has dropped and is now available for download. Just so you know, we approach this with a true masterclass type approach. Like, what are the areas in other people's lives where they're looking to find hope? Areas like marriage, parenting, finances. What does it really mean to grow in my life spiritually? And so we have these growth tracks set up for you. There's also different communities that you can be a part of inside of the app, where you can ask for prayer requests and know that somebody else is praying for you in the specific areas that you need. Download this app, check it out, share it with other people who need a bit more hope in the everyday moments of their life. Back to the show. Let's do this. We got a clip here from one of the worship tutorials. Why don't we roll this, and please note again the beard and the fantastic flannel as we watch it.
I had started leading worship at my high school during the week, and I was like really into it. And I didn't know that you could do it as a job, and I didn't know that you could go to school for it and all this. And I remember my dad breaking down a few ideas. So number one, what do you enjoy doing? Like, what is it that brings you joy? Is
Fishing.
there a
I like
way
to
you
fish.
can actually do that for a living? And don't sell yourself short here. Like, you could, like in my instance, I didn't realize that
Start a
leading
fishing
worship was
YouTube
something
channel.
I could do. Now, that thing,
It's no
do
different.
you get opportunities to do that? Like, do people invite you or ask you if you can come do that for them? Do you get paid to do it? Because if you do, that's kind of helpful
I don't
already
get paid
in
for
this,
You
processing
could.
and all this. That's really cool. You don't need to get paid to do it now, but just
I get
some
free
questions along
guitars.
that lines. Do you get opportunities to do it? I mean, you could just be doing it in your church every single week, and your pastor says, "Hey, we really need you. You do a great job at it." And that's actually point number 3. Do people tell you that you're good at that thing?
I think it's great. I like that clip because, number one, you see worship tutorials, you're not just talking about leading worship. I mean, that seems like you're answering a much bigger question, which was something like, how do you discern God's will for your life? Or
Basically. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a really big question. But what I love, and how I think that applies to what we're talking about is, if somebody says, I want to be an influencer, like in today's world with, Mr. Beast and all these people, it's like, man, I want to make a living just making YouTube videos. So that's okay. But do you have anything that others want to be influenced by?
Yeah.
Right? Like, just the idea of just being an influencer isn't really big enough to make someone an influencer.
Yeah.
And so I love how you were just kind of walking people through, okay, if you're going to do something, like, what do you enjoy doing? And I kind of made the joke, like, I really enjoy fishing. And then, like, somewhere in there was number 2 or number 3 is like, are you good at it?
Yeah.
And just, wow, I'm actually not as good of a fisherman as I want to be. And you said, well, you should just do a YouTube channel. I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to be able to help people be a better fisherman. I just like to fish myself. But I appreciate that, like, helping people understand. And what I heard in that is, if you're going to influence people, or if you want to, you need to actually take an inventory. Like, one, what do you enjoy doing? Because it needs to be something that you enjoy doing. But then, do you have some value to add to others that others might seek out? And I think a lot of times we can get excited about ideas, but it might just not be our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Clearly, you found yours, though, and you guys are doing that. Let me ask you this. So with the influence that you've gained, with influence comes responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you just talk about that a little bit for you, how that kind of gets played out in your life and how you handle that?
There have been numerous times, especially over the last few years, there's just been a lot of stuff. I think social media has made us more aware of stuff that's going on in the country or just in the world in general. I think that's part, we think things are really, really bad, and they are. But I think we know more about it because we have access to it within seconds.
Right.
Like, that's a little different. And I find often that people expect anybody with some sort of influence to have some sort of stance on things.
Yeah.
And it's hard because it's like, you could mean well, let's just, for the sake of this, example here, there's typically like two sides.
Careful, we're not going to edit this out.
Yeah. There's typically, there's an issue and there's two sides.
Yeah.
And you may be leaning more towards one side. I'll be careful not to use directions because that also confuses people.
Right.
If you start saying left and right, it confuses people. You're on one side and you're trying to actually speak in their favor. If you don't say something just right, the people who you are actually in agreement with will still take what you say and blow out of proportion.
Yeah.
But I mean, in Proverbs, it says even a fool is considered wise if he remains silent, basically.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of crazy. And so I've learned I don't have to have an answer for everything because it's kind of weird. The term influencer has like a negative and like a cheesy connotation in some ways, but I also take it rather, it's an honor to be considered that to some people, but it also can be a heavy burden to wear if you don't just like think about what you say. And my whole goal always, I mean, I never want to say this to people, but people want to talk smack on the internet. And I'm like, you would never, ever say that to my face.
Right.
It doesn't matter that I'm 6'4", burly with a beard. That doesn't matter. I just don't think people act real big
more
and
Boy
tough.
Scout than musician. See?
People act big and tough behind a camera because they're not saying anything to anybody's face.
Right.
I think of plenty of times I've been ticked to no end or disliked something somebody said. And I can sit back after the fact and be like, I never would have said anything to that person in person. I never would have said those things. And so I try to just be like a voice of reason, and that's something I regularly do is I just try to call people to higher standards. It's like we're not here to prove a point. We're here to love people, and we're here to point people to Jesus. And if all you're doing in this comment is to prove your point, you're not accomplishing anything. Like in Corinthians, it says, if I have love, or if I'm like, if I speak in the tongues of man, but I don't have love, I'm just a noisy clashing cymbal. Right. And it's like,
and drummers are the worst. I'm just kidding.
Am I
just
right?
kidding. I got a drummer
Am I
in
right?
here. I'm kidding. We got a drummer in here. Just kidding, Ahmad. Just kidding. Just kidding. Oh man. Let's see. How do you recover from that?
Look at the outline.
Yeah, no. I do know. You know what? No, I want to point this out because this is not. That's a good leadership nugget in general.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you're influencing people online or you oversee a team of 3 people, there's a lot of wisdom sometimes in just keeping your mouth closed. Mm-hmm. And I have 0 times in my leadership walk where I thought, man, I'm really glad I gave it to that person.
Yeah,
absolutely. It just doesn't happen.
It does,
like,
even if you win.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's great, man. Yeah. That's with influence comes great responsibility, and I think that's a good one.
That's the Spider-Man wisdom. That's what I say.
There you
it's
go.
Uncle Ben.
That's
with great power comes great responsibility.
Was it Uncle Ben or Aunt May that said that?
I thought it was Uncle Ben. If so, I've said that a lot of times.
It's probably fine.
But I think it's biblical also. To whom much is be given, much will be required.
That's true. There you go.
So Uncle Ben was quoting the Bible.
That's where they got it. There is a man, an artist, quite famous artist by the name of Stephen Curtis Chapman that actually commented on one of your posts. What was that post about? And then what was his comment? And did it make you happy or did it make you sad?
It made me very
there
happy.
It is. Look, we got it up on the screen right now.
Yes. I grew up Episcopalian.
Okay.
And I say this because I was one. I basically
a lot of rock and roll music in Episcopalian
exactly.
churches.
Yep. Big pipe organs.
Yeah.
It's like lazy Catholicism. Okay. It is very reverent in the way that I like know Catholicism to be, but they take away all the extra stuff. So there's no like confession.
I would like to announce that Hope in Real Life does not necessarily support the comments of our guests on the show.
I will say from my experience,
please leave a comment at Worship Tutorials on Instagram.
But it was very similar. And so at the time in my family's life where we were kind of figuring out like there was something more we were missing.
Yeah.
We started listening to Christian music. And my dad was listening to it, and like I wasn't able to listen to like the stuff on the radio because it wasn't bleeped when you buy the CD.
Right.
And my dad was like able to. That was before you could look up the lyrics. You know, like you had to like buy the CD to do it.
Before the internet.
It makes me feel very old saying that. I'm dating myself, I suppose. But we started listening to Stephen Curtis Chapman, and so he is like one of the big influences just for me and my desire to like play music and my love of music. And I had gotten a new guitar. And I was just messing around. And for whatever reason, that song that morning in the gym hit me. And it's Speechless by Stephen Curtis Chapman. And so I just recorded a little video. And I posted it and I wrote a little comment. Or I wrote a caption about it. And I went back and I edited it like 10 minutes later. And I was like, Stephen Curtis Chapman's not going to see this if I tag him. But whatever, I'll just like tag him and I'll say, if you happen to see this. Yeah. Just know that like how big of an impact, musically, like just that's cool. But like how he was like the first person that helped me understand how to be a worship leader, which may be weird to some people. And we could unpack that and be here all day. But basically just the way he led a song with such conviction really helped me kind of like, I remember being in high school being, whoa, I'm not. So I tagged him and I gave a little spit, and I don't know how he happened to see that notification. I'm sure he gets tagged in people's terrible covers of his songs all the time. Right. So I don't know how, but yes, he saw my comment, and as I mentioned, I was deceased, to use the Gen Z jargon. So
I was deceased. Got it. Okay. At first I was like, wait, what? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have high schoolers.
Yeah. So
it.
I was beside myself. Like it was overwhelming, and it was very cool to see that and it was very, very kind. He doesn't need to do that.
Right.
He's a busy man, loads of followers, and the fact that I don't know if he actually watched, but
funny story. So funny to me. I was at this many moons ago, literally decades ago. I was at this worship leader conference, and they had these smaller breakouts, and there was a worship leader there that deeply influenced me as a worship leader by the name of Matt Redman. And Matt was leading this breakout, and it was on songwriting. And he said, man, he kind of got off on a tangent, as Matt does. And he was telling about how he has people come up to him regularly with like demos. Back then it was demos, right, on a cassette. And he said people would come up to him and give him these demo tapes. And it would be so hard because they would say things to him like, I believe God gave me this song, and I want to give it to you. And he said, it's all, in his accent, right? It's like, it's all I could do, but I'm not going to attempt his accent, but it's like, it's all I could do to tell them if God gave you that, it's only because he doesn't want it anymore. It's not because it's
I was trying to decipher where this was going.
Yeah.
I kind of felt that was coming.
I thought it's only because the Lord doesn't want to have it anymore. That was his, so I thought that's good. He's a truth teller. We gotta tell the truth.
So right? That's leaders define reality.
Leaders define reality. Hey, all right. Well, on that one then, you talk about leadership principles in a lot of your clips. In your opinion, what's the most important quality a leader can have?
I think it's probably obvious and probably the cliche answer, but I think it's humility, really, and being like, even though you're trying to teach people, you still need to be teachable yourself.
Yeah.
And whether that's being taught from those you're leading or just in general, always getting better. Because I don't think people want to follow somebody who seems like they know all the answers. Yeah. That doesn't, you can't resonate with somebody who, because I remember thinking that, it's like, why I can't resonate with somebody who I feel like knows everything. Right. When you see that they're a person too, they're trying to learn, you feel more compelled to want to follow and, go after them or go after the same vision with them. And so, I think it's the answer a lot of people probably give, but leading people humbly is probably the best thing you can do. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, Bradford, I see that in your life. I mean, you're a talented guy, gifted guy, influence over here through worship tutorials. I would say at the top, near the top of your game of what it is that you do on a stage with the guitar and leading worship, it would be easy for you to not be. And in the years that I've known you, I've always been impressed that I've never gotten this sense of better than, I deserve this, no prima donna electric guitar, EG1 vibe that you normally get from.
Well, Rhett knows. I always want stereo, but that's about it.
Need a stereo mix. But if humility is the most important, and it seems like to me that you represent that well, how do you stay grounded given the success that you've had in what it is that you do?
We talked earlier about like why do I feel called to do this way, as opposed to being at like a large church as a worship leader or something. One thing is, and I've heard someone else say this, and because I don't know what, but I guess having a dad too, but becoming a dad, having a kid, really like softens your heart in weird ways.
Yeah.
But I think one thing is, my kid does not care. Like, he doesn't care about how many views a video does or doesn't get. He'll be 4 in a couple months. He doesn't care if we're making lots of money or none.
Yeah.
And there's something about, one reason why it's kind of cool to do things the way I do is I don't really get direct feedback about how it's going. And so I just went to like a big music conference convention thing called NAMM. It has something to do with, I don't remember what it stands for, but basically a bunch of
I think it's North American Missions.
North American Music Merchants, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, something like that. But it has something to do with like music equipment. And people know me there, but I go there once a year. And people see like, oh, I love the channel. I've seen your videos, that kind of thing. And it's like, it's kind of cool because I go home and I could just done a video up in my studio upstairs and think it was awesome. And my kid comes running in, excited to see me at the end of the day. He knocks over my camera or whatever. It's, and like all he cares about is me. Like he doesn't care about any of those other things that I do. I have lots of guitars. I mean, he thinks they're cool, but he doesn't care about those. And I think one thing is just like that's what's most important to me is my wife and my son.
Yeah.
And providing for them and us walking in step. And I think it's an interesting thing to be on the internet because I don't directly get that feedback. And I think that's helpful. It's also hard to be by yourself at times because I work by myself now. My partner, Brian, actually moved to Alabama. So like I don't see him all that often. And I think that's actually helpful in a way. So being online can be depressing. And I've seen people talk about that. It can be very hard to, you feel like you got to keep up this persona. But I think that's what wears you out also.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great, man. I mean, and that's whether you're online with millions or you're in front of a congregation of thousands or leading a company, leading an organization, a department. The leaders that I have seen, and I'll just use the word burnout, but I don't mean burnout. I mean like, something toxic happens because of, overtime. You take small steps in a certain direction and man, how the heck did I get here?
Yeah.
And, man, I'm telling you 9 out of 10 times, it seems like somewhere along the way, someone forgot about the people that were in their life that were the most close to him, whose voices should matter the most. And then we start buying into what we believe the masses are saying. The reality is the masses don't know us.
Yeah.
It's easy to come behind a microphone and pretend to be somebody else. And so that's great. That's great feedback. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
If somebody out here is listening and they are thinking about starting a business or they want to gain influence, what advice would you give to them out of the gate?
Well, our situation with the business is not like most, I think. So I can't speak directly to that. It was a long play. But I think that's one thing too, is be prepared to put a lot of time and energy into it and with not a lot of return at the beginning. And I think a lot of people see the hustle, the glorified hustle, and it's like, I was working 6-7 days a week. I didn't really, I took time off on a day, but it wasn't like I took whole days off.
Right.
Like I was in my room at night. When my wife and I first got married, I was upstairs in my little office studio space working, prepping for trying to get stuff ready so we could make the most of our time on Fridays. And, it seemed like normal because some people think, well, Sunday's church and then you work Monday through Friday. But it's like, well, yeah, that equated to working 6 days a week. And I didn't work anywhere near as much as people, but it's going to take, my wife, I had to kind of tell her, and get her on board and say, this is what I feel like I'm supposed to do the return isn't going to be seen for a while. And when I brought home like $300, she was like, "Huh, that's cool." Brought home 1,000. She's like, "Whoa." And we're like, so I mean, like, it took a lot of time. I mean, I've been at it since 2013, and it wasn't until like 2021 that I stepped into it full time. And it takes a lot of work, and it can be scary.
Yeah.
But I think it's just, you just got to be consistent, and if you can pace yourself, you're going to last longer.
Right.
But if you're just, I guess it depends on the industry and all too, but I mean, that's just pacing yourself and being consistent and getting your spouse on board. Any support you can get is very important.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is know it's going to take work.
Yep.
Be ready to put in the work. But what I heard in our time together also is start. Like you got to start. Like you just got to start.
Do it.
Yeah.
Just do
it. I said, I've got some friends that work in the entrepreneurship space and the startup space, and they talk about sometimes you got to ship the ugly baby. Like it's not ready. You don't want people to see it. So you got to start. But the third that really jumps out to me about you, what you guys are doing is you need to be adding value. And there is a difference in trying to build an empire versus trying to add value to other people's lives. And so I'm hearing you talk a lot about the value that you actually do look to bring to those that are engaging what it is that you do.
Yeah.
Bradford, I appreciate your time. I got one more question for you, and then I
Absolutely.
think we've got a question that's coming in from the outside as well. But my question for you is, this is hope in real life, right? We want to bring hope to the everyday moments of everyone's lives. I'd love to hear from you. What are you hopeful for in the life of worship tutorials over the next 2, 3, 5 years?
We are, because we're now separated.
Other than now, and that all these listeners have heard, you're clearly going to surpass 1 million at this point.
Well,
they're going to jump over and
I'm
subscribe.
hoping so.
But,
yeah,
okay, what's
please
next?
like and subscribe and be notified and all that YouTube jargon. One thing that this separation, I guess restructuring, I know separation is a weird way to call it, but like now that this restructuring is kind of like been forced upon us, we're really dialing in our methods, because it's not easy to work when you're not sure where stuff is. When we were together, I was always at his house, and it was just like we did stuff together. It was very efficient. So we're looking forward to restructuring because we have to, but also to kind of just like add more of a team behind us to help us keep going and just be more impactful. Because, I mean, it'd be great to make $1 million. Absolutely. Who would not want that?
Right.
But we feel very passionate, like we've talked about, just about helping people and adding value and just doing that. So we're hoping to be able to do that. One big thing, I'm wanting to work on a guitar course. And I think there's lots of courses, but you can't, you go on YouTube and type guitar, you're going to find millions of videos. But I want to do a course that helps worship guitar specifically. There's no like, have to do it this way, have to do it that way, but there's still techniques that I think people don't really understand and they want help with. And so if we do something very focused on that, I'm hoping to be able to help people in that way and just continue to help people be better.
Awesome. Well, Bradford, and thank you so much for your time. Thank
My
you for what it
pleasure.
is
Thank
that
you.
you do. It's been great to hang out. Your beard's looking great.
Thank you.
I applaud you. You didn't bring any flannel in the studio today, but
No, I did not.
but man, so good to spend the time with you. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in with us. Make sure that you like, subscribe, share with others who you know could use a little bit more hope in the everyday moments of their life. And we look forward to seeing you back next week with episode 14. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hope in Real Life podcast. If this content was valuable for you, don't forget, like, subscribe, share. You never know how important it could be to bring a little hope into someone else's life. There's even a place here for you to comment. We would love to hear from you and hear your feedback. Until next time, let's keep sharing hope.